Hi everybody, welcome to this week's episode, I should say, I guess, of Read Away.
What are we doing? Wait,
What
what's this again?
what who are you people? What are you doing
What am I
here?
doing?
Hi everybody, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about chapter 4 of The Other
This book.
Westmore.
Da,
Yes.
da, da.
I get to hold up four fingers like I'm a member of the Four Horsemen. So, four individuals thinking singularly, acting collectively, except it's just the two of us, and the rest is
We don't always think the same way,
we yes, no, we do not, no, we do not. But anyway, we're going to talk
but
about
only
chapter.
when you're wrong, Steve. It's just unfortunate that that happens so
It
often.
happened. Well, I mean, let's not go. I mean, not. It happens every once in a while.
That's true. That's true. You do a pretty good job of agreeing with me most times.
I've learned. It's taken
Oh,
years, but I've
oh,
learned.
oh, 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 oh. Okay, yeah, okay. The questions, they're not questions, they're statements,
This,
Random Geek.
the statements. Yeah, I call them questions too because, as you just
They're
said, sometimes
not.
I'm wrong. But we're going to talk about statements 4 and 5 this time. So those of you who were with us for the first Westmore episode and you took the Likert survey and you hopefully kept track of your answers, we're going to be talking about your answers
Bring up my
uh,
answers.
4 and 5 in a minute. But first,
Da-da-da-da-da.
Dana, how are you?
Pretty good. A little bit unsettled and anxious. I think just because I had a nap today and it was a little bit later than usual, and so I just sort of been, recalibrating.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. It's just I don't know. Honestly, I'm not. Other than that, I'm not sure why. I'd forgotten that we're going to um my husband's grandfather's birthday celebration tomorrow, and like I knew that it was like coming up, but then earlier this week I was like, oh, it's cool, and Juneteenth becoming a federal holiday, because I was just like, well, it's on a Saturday, so I guess most people who work a 9 to 5 job are getting the day off anyhow, and I was
Yeah.
just like, are they gonna give? But of course, I don't think it takes effect as a federal holiday until next year. Somebody was saying something about that, and then I was just thinking, so I'm getting together with family on the 19th of June, but it's not for that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know. It's just, but I mean, I just, I don't know. I don't know.
Is it going to be like a big family gathering or are there going to be a bunch of people there?
Yes.
Oh, God, shoot me in the face. I mean, I don't have to, I'm not going, but I mean, believe me, that is, oh, just shoot me in the face. Yeah. So I don't
You
know
just
if,
don't like people, Steve.
I don't know if that is, I don't know if that is the source of your discontent, but if I were you, that would be the source of my discontent, knowing that tomorrow I have to go to this big family thing with a bunch of people from my family and just thinking like, or from my significant other's family, which, isn't any better. And just thinking, oh, good. I have that to look
I
forward to.
think in your case, that would be significantly worse.
There's my Saturday gone.
Well,
Great.
I don't, oh, shnikes, I need to, I don't think it'll be gone because we're only starting at, it'll be like a lunchy type thing.
Oh, okay.
And I need to double check with Dwayne because I did not get to watch In the Heights last weekend, and then my friend messaged me and said, "Hey, this week's been crazy. Can we schedule a time for In the Heights?" I was like, would tomorrow evening work?" And she said yes, but I haven't said anything about it. So,
You
but
should have just said, "Hey, I can't make it to Granddad's birthday. I'm going over to my friend's house to watch In the Heights." Problem solved.
see, I don't know. Like, I tend to when there's like a large number of people that I don't know super well, it's like it's easier because you can just kind of circulate and have just sort of the same. I mean, it's going to be, so how was the school year? And I'll just have variations on that conversation a couple of times. And then,
Mm.
like you say,
You are
but if
describing
you have
you.
a
You are.
smaller group of people who you kind of know, but you don't know well, that's when those conversations peter out. And then they feel like they have to say something, and you can see them struggling through, and if they're not comfortable just kind of sitting around and finishing lunch quietly, or in the ideal world everybody just sort of reading books together, like different stuff, not really talking about it, but just having a book at the table, everybody has a different book. That'd be great.
Well, but you're also. I mean, you would be watching a movie, like you're getting together to watch In the Heights. So
No, I'm,
presumably,
I'm just saying hypothetically, like,
hypothetically,
and this is with somebody that I do know well, but
yeah,
I was saying, if I was at, I'd rather go to a large extended family gathering than a small extended family gathering
yeah.
of people
But
that I don't, you know what I mean? Because then
I
there's
hear you.
conversation. Yeah.
I hear you. But that's like saying I'd rather get shot in the leg than shot in the heart. I mean, like,
Well, I
well, yeah,
would.
I'd rather get shot in the leg,
See?
but I'd rather. But can we? Is there a way we can avoid the shot completely? Like, do I need to? Does somebody need to shoot me at all? Why can't I just go watch a movie with my friend? But anyway, so I hope
But
everything goes
it
well.
relates, I think, to this chapter of the book, because we start seeing the effects, especially with the other West,
Yes.
of the importance of extended family. And so, yes, having we need other people in our lives, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, but all at
No, actually,
once.
I'm not sorry, Steve. You
I'm fine.
need other people. You need to
Having
get
other
out more.
having other people in your life is great, but going to a gathering of a whole bunch of them at once, like I said, shoot me in the face.
Like, I
Like,
just disagree. I mean, especially if it's people that you don't know well, I'd much rather be in a large
oh,
gathering with them, and especially when they can all talk to each other, and I can just take my plate in the corner and just sort of, just chill. It's a large gathering is much safer than people that, but it's
I
important. It's important to foster those relationships
uh,
and honor those people. It is,
I
and I'm sorry you
I
don't like
uh,
it.
I think you are just better at putting a positive spin on it than I am
I'm better at
because
putting a positive spin on anything than just about anybody I know. I'm really good at that.
you
But
are
no, and it's not just spin. I do actually mean that. Now, in fairness, um, I get along with my family better than just about anybody else I know.
oh, I get along with mine great too, but I mean, it
No,
doesn't mean I want
beyond that,
the,
like I like spending time with my
yeah,
family.
well, that's what. See, yeah, I mean, I get along with them. It doesn't mean I want to spend an afternoon in the company of a couple of of a dozen of them or more. It's like no, 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 not for any reason. like, just no. That's the thing. It's not so much the family thing. I mean, like there are like I mean, honestly, there are people in in my extended family, and there were certainly people in my wife's extended family when we were together that I just could not care less about. And I mean, in my own extended family, like I have aunts and uncles and cousins. If I found out that they, got run over by a train, I would have literally no reaction at all. That I don't care. They mean nothing to me. So if, if it was like the option of, well, I can just have my normal Saturday and do what I was going to do anyway, or I can spend several hours at a gathering with a bunch of them, like that's not even a decision, you know. Like I'd be like, no, I'll just not go and do my regular thing instead of. And I mean, and it's like it's nice that you put a positive spin on it. Like, well, if there's a large gathering, then you don't have to get into deep conversations, and I can just take my plate and go find a quiet corner. Like that's great, but why not just not be there? I'm not, and you're going, and maybe you have to go
Yeah.
because it's a family
No,
thing.
I don't.
But
I
like,
don't. I think if I said I just really don't want to go. But I mean, it's not. I mean, how often did when you when you were living with your parents,
yes,
back when you were a kid, how often
yes.
did you visit your pap and granny?
Oh well, Pap and Granny I saw all the time. Um, but it was just the two of them.
Right.
The extended family, the extended family on my dad's side, um, other than my my I called him my uncle. He was actually my great uncle, my pap's brother, who I
Hmm.
saw
Yeah,
occasionally.
your dad was an only child,
My
right?
dad was an only child, so yeah, so I didn't have like
Yeah.
I had second cousins on my dad's side. I didn't have first cousins.
Right.
Uh and you know, I mean, other but I saw the extended family on that side very very rarely, and beyond my pap's brother and his grandson, who was my second cousin, uh, I saw them almost never. I did see my extended family on my mom's side, not regularly, but a lot more often than on my dad's side, like maybe a few times a year. You know, and I mean, and like they were fine. Like on
And
a
some of it may just be, what you're used to.
oh, I
But
think that's a
essentially,
lot of
like
it.
like this is, if you had extended family that you didn't see very often on your dad's side, and it was Pap's birthday and they were going to be there, would you avoid it?
Probably, yeah, because I get to see Pap all the time.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Like why? Yeah, I mean, if Pap's like if Pap and Granny were alive and they were having like a big gathering of all the family, and I saw them all the time anyway, oh well, I guess I'll catch them some other time. Why do I like? I'm not gonna go and just, it's just so fucking tedious and boring. I just no, that's I would avoid that at all costs, and I have throughout my life. Like if there's any way I can possibly not go, I don't go. So
Well, then
what?
consider yourself very fortunate. I mean, it works for you. And like I said, some of it may be what you're used to. I mean,
I think that's a lot of it.
you know,
I mean,
I grew
yeah,
up with extended family gatherings pretty much annually, and that was just a thing. And like I said, I get along really well with my mom's side of the family, to the extent that we have Facebook groups where we rant about other people and, like, why are people not getting vaccines? This is good for you, and
yeah.
we
Well,
just,
yeah. I mean, if
and
you
it's
have
it's really nice. It's like, especially living where I do. It's like it's nice to have, like,
a,
people that I have experience with, and a lot of people. I think, Random Geek, were you the one? Yeah, or yeah, you said the bloodline thing is ridiculous, but I would say that for my family, it's not. Well, I mean, it's not about bloodline because I've got siblings who are not blood related to me, um, and then of course your in-laws obviously aren't, but like it's more about the shared experiences that you've had. I think that makes more of a difference.
yeah. And
So
yeah, I mean, I'm willing. I freely admit a lot of it is what I'm accustomed to because like I've told you before, Dana, and I think I've probably mentioned it on videos before too. Like, for us and our family, we always had Thanksgiving here with Pap and Granny, and there were literally six of us. That was
yep.
Thanksgiving dinner. It was six people. It was not a big gathering of like a dozen or 20 or 30 people. It was, it was six people around a single table. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't cacophony. It was, a nice dinner with my parents and my brother and one set of grandparents. And that was Thanksgiving to me. And
Mhm.
when I would, experience it when when I got married or, when I would talk to friends about their Thanksgivings and it was like this big event where like, multiple generations of the family were there and it was cousins and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. I like, I would jump off a cliff. Like I hate that. I hate that. Uh, so I prefer the smaller gathering. And like some random geek mentioned, like the only time he ever got to see his cousins was at weddings and funerals. Um, I would gnaw off my own leg to avoid going to another wedding. I hope I never go to another wedding in for the rest of my life. Weddings are the worst social events we have ever come up with. I would rather go to a funeral because a funeral at least doesn't have a fucking after party that you're obliged to go to. I mean, you know,
Yeah, but me. There's food. I like
Yeah,
food.
but there's food all there's so many better ways to get food. Like,
I'm with Random Geek. You meet interesting, you can meet some interesting people there. And
uh,
I don't know. And the other thing
yeah.
is, what you described about your family Thanksgiving is very much like what Thanksgiving and or Christmas, depending on when we got to go down and see my grandfather, was usually also six people,
Mhm.
because it was my grandfather and my parents, and by the time I was old enough to remember, the three youngest kids.
Right. Right.
And sometimes my Aunt Lois and Silnay, but usually not. She usually wasn't able to be there. So yeah, there would be six of us. But I mean, but we visited. My grandfather lived close enough that we were able to visit him pretty regularly. So it was like another weekend dinner that they worked on. There was food that took more effort to prepare.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, okay, whatever. As a kid, I would have been, I guess I would have probably been happy with like chicken nuggets and mashed potatoes, mashed potatoes.
I love
um,
mashed potatoes as much as anybody.
Wait.
But I mean, yeah, what?
Oh, we have a tie on what?
I think
Oh,
people are
okay.
deciding on whether or not,
But then my mom's side of the
you know.
family lived like our immediate family lived in Pennsylvania, and my mom's side of the family was all the way down in Florida. So we would go and visit there during the summer. And so, but like they lived in different parts of Florida, like, St. Petersburg, Tampa, Gainesville, Orlando, and not like all right together. So like we'd go down, and I think we'd usually stay in a hotel. I don't remember staying with relatives that often, but that would be like our summer vacation. We'd stay in a hotel and we'd go to the beach and we'd visit family. But it wouldn't be everybody like all together. It would be like on this day, we might run into this group of the family, and on this day we might these cousins, and people would kind of come and go haphazardly.
Mhm.
And then there would be some times when we just wouldn't, nobody's schedule would coincide, and we just, be on our own at the beach. So it's interesting, the different sort of experiences
Yeah.
that we have. Um, yeah, it's just, and I think those experiences are what shape up us in ways that we don't understand. I was talking with CMAC. I told you about this.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
About the urban, because it was on a Facebook post that you made. And it mentioned the pickup. We were talking back and forth in response to somebody else's comment about the pickup truck.
Yeah.
And you've got a pickup.
I
And
do.
I said, I think that's part of the metropolitan rural divide, is that a pickup truck is like not just not as helpful in a city, but it's like unhelpful because it's bigger and you don't have space for people, and the city space is at a premium and you have lots of people. Whereas in rural areas, it's exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
You got all kinds of space and you got stuff to cart around because you can't be going back and forth to the grocery store all the time, but there aren't as many people. So like you got the cab, and I mean, it's going to be you and like your spouse and or your dog, and then you get stuff in the back. And it's just indicative of how much of a difference there is between those demographics and what their needs are. And so, but he asked about, is it just because of geography, or is it also that have to do with like small town politics? And I was talking about, because I'd actually talked to some people who on social media who'd done some
Yeah.
research on this. It's really interesting that there have been some new developments in research talking about how yes, college and university life can make people more liberal, but it does not, they're not able to correlate it between, it's not that their experience at college, like having a college experience, does not unilaterally make people more liberal. And like if you look at everybody who's in college, it doesn't affect people the same way.
Right.
And there's also a difference between majors. But if you look at the experiences that people have in different majors, you can't pick out, well, the experiences of this major align with the experiences of that major, and they both made people more liberal. But what it seems to indicate to me is that people with a liberal, who are questioning their conservatism, tend to pick things that then push them, that reinforce that questioning and give them, more reason to choose to be more liberal and go further left. So there's some sort of the pre-collegiate experience in conservative areas that lead people away from that conservatism, and it's that lead people to make choices that reinforce a rejection of that conservatism, and we don't really fully understand that yet. Why some people who live in rural areas. And the other thing I was thinking about talking about you with, and we haven't gotten to talk about the book, was because I wanted to ask you, since I haven't seen any more of Superman and Lois.
Yes.
But remember that there's that sense of, you left. There was a day when people who left and got more education would bring what they learned back to the town instead of just,
that's what Kyle
benefiting
says.
themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's, quite often what whoever Lana's husband dude doesn't seem to recognize is that Kyle. Yeah. What Kyle doesn't seem to recognize is that people who leave are often looking to escape. They have had experiences that were negative in that rural and small town area, mm-hmm. and that they're pushing back against that and wanting to get away from that negativity. And then the people who have had positive experiences want to stay there and don't understand why somebody wouldn't want to come back and help out their community. But it's because their community created problems for them. So it's just, it's a really interesting dynamic. I would love to learn more about that. So I've gone on about that, but I'm sorry.
And it does actually kind of tie into the book a little bit, because it's, we learn a little bit in this chapter we're going to discuss about the support systems that both Wesses have, and how those come into play in
and the way that experience and choices are interconnected.
Yeah,
because the book really focuses on choices and how one choice leads to another. But I really think that it does a disservice in that it glosses over the way that experiences inform the choices, or not inform directly, but they shape us in ways that lead us to make certain, choose certain options over other options. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why I feel unsettled, is like I've been, a lot of things have sort of kind of started coming together for me and thinking about this, and they're not like, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I haven't really come to how it all fits together yet. Yeah. So I'm still sort of processing all of that. And it is now 6:25. So I've had like an extra 5 minutes of rambling here. So you can see there's been a lot for me to think about. It's absolutely fascinating why we are the way we are, why we make the choices that we do. And so like our discussion about our different experiences of family gatherings, it's just part of that, and how that, what we like about that, is reflective of our experiences that have made us who we are. So,
yeah. Well, and arguably the most fascinating part of that question of what makes us who we are is that there is not a simple answer. For anybody, let alone like for the human species as a whole, like even for any individual, what makes you who you are. It's not that there isn't an answer, but you can't just say like, oh, well, and I think it's one of the things that this book, deals with, or attempts to deal with, is, why did this West go this way and the other West went that way? And it's not as simple. The fact that they had different support systems, the fact that they had, what one of them had better role models, or one of them had family that could step in and help out more than the other one did, that certainly was important and played a role, but that by itself is not the reason.
Yeah. And it's not just that there are multiple reasons, is that those multiple reasons interconnect and pull on each other in different ways. And it's absolutely fascinating and, kind of overwhelming to think about, but I just think it's really interesting.
And also I think unsettling to a lot of us, because I think I've thought this for a long time, that one of the most uncomfortable thoughts to a lot of people is how contingent they are on factors that they can't
that
control.
are
Yeah.
out
Like
of their control.
to the
We,
point, even like basic things like your personality, your identity,
yeah.
the essential things that make you who you are far more contingent, are not nearly as immutable, or as you might think they are, and or at one time perhaps were not. And
Well, not only that, but they're not as much a factor of your own choices as much as they are the things that you've experienced, all these
yeah,
external factors
yeah,
that are outside your control. Even
yeah,
who you are is not completely under your, is not, is in many ways not under your control. And that's kind of scary, especially in, the American culture that values and prioritizes individuality
yeah,
so much, and individual choice and responsibility. The idea that, there are some things that becoming who we are is not entirely up to us. I mean, that's like, that's like un-American to
yeah.
think that,
Well, because we like the notion that there is some irreducible sense of self that is in all of us. There is a soul or some other thing, whatever you want to call it, however you want to conceive it. There is a thing that when you strip everything away is essentially you.
Mhm.
And the truth is that doesn't exist. There is not a single thing that is you. You and everybody else are a product of a billion different things, most of which you had no direct control over, most of which you're not even aware of.
Yeah.
And you are the constantly changing, growing product of all of these factors that are outside of your control and awareness. And yeah, when you think about that, that can be a scary thought, because we think of ourselves as these unified things. It's like, oh no, I'm
Well,
me.
and not
You
only that,
know?
but we like the idea of agency, you know,
Oh, absolutely. That's another big part of
especially
it. Yeah,
over ourselves.
yeah.
Like, we don't like it when somebody else bosses us around. The idea that the entire freaking universe is controlling us for the most part
Hmm.
is really disempowering. And it kind of kneecaps you.
Yeah. Well, and there is also um a, a contradiction between what I think, and I'm not, like I don't really have a strong position either way on whether free will is real or free will is an illusion. But I do know that, based on what I just said, like our lives and even our own individual personalities and selves are the result of a whole bunch of stuff that is completely out of our control.
Yeah.
Um, so whether you believe that free will is actually possible or not, there's a lot of important stuff about ourselves that we have no control over. And yeah, and I think that's just the truth. I just think that's the way life works and the way the universe works. And yet I also think that the most pragmatic way for us to live our lives and to organize our society and to treat each other, et cetera, is to at least live with the pretense that free will exists and that our choices matter and that we have at least a certain amount of agency. Um, and those two things contradict each other. So it's not just that we like just for, like, our own comfort or our own vanity, that we like the idea that we have agency. To a certain degree, it makes sense to live and to treat each other as though we do have agency.
Yeah.
But you also have to acknowledge that we don't have nearly as much agency as we think we do, or as we
Or
would
as we would
like
like
to,
to
as we would
believe
like
that
to
we
have.
do.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah,
So Random Geek, I'm really curious about the quotes there, because I think isn't that libertarian philosophy? Like the whole, individual, above society. That sounds pretty like Randish to me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I think you mean libertarianism, and I'm
yeah.
not. You might mean liberalism, but I'm pretty sure that's
It
libertarianism,
sounds
not
pretty
liberalism.
libertarian.
And
Yeah.
then Sarah Scott, yeah, that's what Kahneman says. What your boyfriend is talking about. That's in here, which is this is one of my favorite books, and I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it in my books that I love. It's over here in the pile of about 15 more books, plus the ones that are back in my bedroom on the favorite bookshelf shelf. It's going to take me a year and a half to get through all this, but
So, shall we do
some random
the
geek. I'm confident that you do, but pretty sure you're wrong about that. But that's okay.
shall,
So yeah,
shall
let's go ahead now that
let's
it's 6:30.
let's do
Six
the
thirty, and let's go and look at the survey.
yeah, let's do the Likert survey and then we'll talk about the chapter. So, for those of you who were playing at home when we started, we all took the Likert survey, which asked us to respond to a series of statements based on how much we agreed or disagreed with them, and we're going through and examining the particular statements a couple at a time in each episode of this series. And tonight we're going to talk about first number four. And number four on the Likert survey says, in general, boys are biologically wired to be more aggressive than girls. And you state your agreement as either A, strongly agree, B, somewhat agree, C, somewhat disagree, or D, strongly disagree. And for this one, I put D, strongly disagree.
You did.
I did.
Because you've met me.
Well, yes, partially, and I've met I it's it's like we were talking about last time. It's the absolutism in the question.
It
It
says in general.
yeah, but even in general, I just I've known too many people on both sides of that binary that that defy that stereotype, you know, to say, "Oh no, that's generally true." I don't think it's. I think it is a common perception. I think it's conventional wisdom, but I don't think it's. I'll put it that I do not think that is a useful insight to human nature. I feel like a lot of people treat it as a useful insight. They treat it as though saying like, well, it's just, boys are hardwired to be more aggressive than girls. I I don't think that's true, and I don't think that it does anybody any real good to treat that as some kind of great truth.
Sarah, I think your boyfriend is wrong. Um, yes, I would say that, but I would agree with you about men being stronger and more aggressive. And I do think, actually, I originally put D, but I might take that back down to C.
Okay.
But it would be because of the way that, like we were talking about before, the way that our environment actually affects our brains. So boys and then men, because they are socialized as boys and men,
Yeah.
become more aggressive, and it literally affects their biology. I would argue that that's what happens. Does that make sense? So yes, boys and men biologically become more wired. What was it? Wired to be more aggressive than girls, not because of how they're born, not because of something innate, but because that socialization literally changes their biology. So,
Well, yeah.
and then yes, we can decide to act on, because we do have the illusion of free will, we do have the option to choose in any given situation how aggressively we respond.
Yeah. Well, it's a form of self-fulfilling prophecy. I
Okay,
mean,
random geek, I will tell you, I don't watch stuff. I don't watch stuff. If you can provide, if it's got a transcript or there is an article or something, absolutely. But I usually don't even rewatch most of our stuff. I haven't even finished watching. Gosh, I've barely gotten started on the Ensign's log stuff. There's a lot of episodes.
oh
There's an
yeah.
awful lot of episodes, and we have to listen to it, and we can't just read it because I read so much faster than I listen. I wonder if on SoundCloud you can play the no, I don't have, like, I'll have background music, but like things that go at a steady pace, I just like they're out there watching a movie. I don't watch things or listen to things beyond like background stuff, or in the car when I'm stuck for this amount of time and I can't read. But yeah, as I've gotten older, I've got less patience with things that I have to
You
watch or listen.
you live life at your
Um,
own pace.
damn straight. I got stuff to do. There's
Yeah.
so much experience. I'm gonna die, Steve.
Well,
Okay, we're
yes,
all gonna die,
we all are
and
going.
I've
Yeah.
got there is so much interesting stuff out there, and I'm not gonna get to experience it all, but I'm gonna experience as much of it as I darn well can. You better believe it.
I believe it. But yeah, getting back to the men versus women thing, I think a lot of it is it's like I was saying, it's self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, it's
But
we
self-fulfilling prophecy can't affect biology,
well,
which is
but
why
that's
I'm
what I'm
pulling mine
saying is,
back from D to C.
what I'm saying is like we spend, generations upon generations upon generations raising boys to be more violent and aggressive. And then we point to the fact that boys tend to be more violent and aggressive than girls, and we say, aha, see, it's biological. No.
Well,
I mean,
essentially, when people say biological, they mean innate.
yeah,
And I think there, like we were talking about before, um there's a lack of understanding about the way that environment and experience, as well as individual choice, like can sort of confirm and coalesce those qualities. They can sort of firm them up and shore them up and make them stronger. Like we've talked about getting somebody's the difficulty in changing deeply held beliefs, that when you provide information that says no, that what you believe is actually factually demonstrably incorrect, that tends to make people, rather than making them say, oh, that's correct information, thank you, they become more defensive and hold on to their incorrect
yeah,
information more tightly.
yeah,
So those the experiences matter.
yeah.
Yeah. So what
So
was the next one?
the next one is number 5, which is someone who sells illegal drugs is a bad person. Strongly agree, somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. And
Number
for this
5.
one, I said C,
So did I.
somewhat agree. Because again, I feel like the absolutism in the question that time sort of, because like I think it depends on the situation and it depends on the drug, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And it, because like, I mean, generally speaking, I think if you're selling like heroin to people, you're probably a bad person. But I can't even say you're definitely a bad person because I don't know your life.
Yeah.
Maybe your life has been so shitty and so desperate that, you've been pushed to the point where you have you've made the calculation that this is, like, and if your life is that bad, um, you know, it's difficult for me to just condemn you and say, well, you're a bad person, as though it's just a simple thing. It's probably a lot more complicated. I mean, generally speaking, people who sell drugs that are addictive and dangerous, like if you sell weed, I don't give a fuck. Like that doesn't really bother me. Weed doesn't really kill people or ruin people's lives. But if you're selling like hard drugs that get people addicted and kill people, um, you're probably a bad person. Not necessarily. And like I said, you may be in a situation where like you're the other Wes in the chapter we're going to talk about. I don't think the other Wes is necessarily a bad person because he sold drugs or was involved in the drug trade. But I mean, like, if you're making your living getting people hooked on heroin, I don't think kindly of you.
You're taking, I mean, one of the things that I talk about, there's discussion on pretty regularly on my Facebook feed about um whether or not addiction is like a disease.
Yeah.
And um and usually what I will try to respond is that addiction is a response to trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That drug abuse is a response to trauma, just like alcohol abuse is. I mean,
Yeah,
alcohol is a drug,
you're coping with
effectively.
something. You're trying, yeah.
Exactly. And it's a way of, it's like we saw with the other Wes Moore. He remembered that feeling that it was a way to make the problems go away, even if it didn't, if it just was temporary and didn't actually do anything about the problems. It made them go away for a while.
Yeah.
And he realized, he understood that people want that. Whereas there are certainly healthier ways, more long lasting, safe ways, that allow you to connect more fully with others and, do less harm to your body. That's, essentially it's a less worse option than, whatever it is that you can't deal with, that is essentially crippling you.
Yeah. Sarah in the chat said, however bad my life was, I wouldn't try to profit by making other people's lives worse. And that's kind of what it comes down to for me, as far as like the drug dealing thing is.
It is to some degree, but at the same time, I don't want to, the people who are choosing to buy these drugs, they have a choice between bad and worse, and whatever they're trying to escape from is so bad that the choice of drugs to them is not as bad as whatever they're trying to escape from.
Yeah.
And so
but
I'm
but
at the
that
same,
is
the other thing that it comes into for me is that street drugs are poorly regulated, or I mean, not regulated.
Not regulated.
They'll be illegal. And that's one of the things that I've seen with marijuana becoming legal, is that it's not well regulated. And in some of the other states, in Georgia, it's not legal for recreational use. But I've visited with friends in other states, and we've looked at what it's like to sort of go through that process, and it's kind of different than it was for alcohol, because alcohol had been around for like ages and ages and ages. And so, I mean, pre-industrial revolution. And so, but as it was legal during the industrial revolution, as the whole conveyor belt type factory thing, that as standardization became an issue and became like the standard, alcohol was around. Whereas pot did not become standardized through that process. And what we're seeing now is there are a lot of small distributors, and it's not well regulated. And so there are stores that have to be really careful, or having complaints from customers because the product that they're delivering is irregular.
Right.
And so, and that's obviously more of a concern with street drugs. Just you don't, I mean, it's like in A Few Good Men, a dime bag of oregano. You don't know what you're getting. You don't know.
Right.
I mean, my goodness.
but to bring it back to the morality issue, though, I mean, like,
but that is part of the morality issue. Like, can't be sure of what you're offering and how it will affect somebody. It might kill them.
Okay, I agree, but
that's what I'm going with. Like, you don't know. I mean, and what people are doing with this product, if you don't know how weak or how strong it is, and they're, they think they've got, something that's this concentrated and it's this concentrated, that could kill them.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with you, but I mean, I think it doesn't really, like, for me, it doesn't really affect my response to the question. You know what I mean? Like the most important thing to me is what Sarah said a minute ago in the chat, which is that you're profiting off of making other people's lives worse. And there may be circumstances in your life that make that more forgivable in your case, but it's still something that you need to be forgiven for. Like, it's a bad thing. And Sarah also brought up an example that I use a lot as well, which is, psychics do the same thing. It's usually less immediately destructive to a person's life, than getting them addicted to a lethal drug. But it's the same sort of thing. It's you're exploiting people's. If you're the kind of psychic that says, "Oh, I can talk to your dead loved ones," you're exploiting people's grief, or you're at least exploiting people's credulity. You are fleecing a sucker when you're claiming to be a psychic and saying, for this much money I can tell you your future, or I can reconnect you with your dead loved ones. And and there are people who make the argument, well, but the people that go to psychics, they, like they want this. It's just like if you are a drug addict, and well, you want the drug, like, nobody has to. It's the old saying, oh, nobody sells anybody drugs, the drugs sell themselves. But that's not really the point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really, that's not the side of the transaction that I'm the most interested in. Like, yeah, I know there are people who are willing to buy the drugs or willing to go to the psychic. Yeah, those are the people that are being exploited by the drug dealer or the psychic or whoever. I don't think the person doing the exploiting should be allowed to do that. Like, whether the person being exploited is willing or not is irrelevant to me. They're being
Yeah.
exploited. And I
I
don't
want
think
to
that
go.
should
I
be
want to. I
allowed.
want to jump back. Sarah, I think. Where'd my cursor go? There it is. Sarah asked me a question in the chat. She said, "If I walk home at night, are you frightened of running into guys or girls?" I'm not. If anything, I'm frightened of cars. Because I live in a small neighborhood, kind of a small town area, and there aren't sidewalks. So it's not as bad when it's actually at night, because then, like, if you can't drive safely without headlights, then you're not going to. But like sometimes when I've been driving home from play practice because it's so late, that it stays light so late. Sorry, I'm like trying to put that in words. That like a couple of times I've been like, it's 9:15 at night. I realize that it's not pitch black out, but the sun has gone down. It's twilight. Why are your lights not on?
Yeah.
Just So yeah, that twilight time is actually the most dangerous time for me, without sidewalks and with people sometimes not freaking having their lights on. And I always make sure that I'm wearing light colored clothes. Ideally, if they have something reflective on them, that's great. But
so you don't have a preference?
I don't. There's occasionally, like on my Facebook feed, there's a post that floats around. Every woman has held her keys in her hand. Every woman has walked or has crossed the street to avoid a man, or crossing near to a man, and every woman has felt fear walking alone at night. I'm like, I just let it go because I don't want to be that person. But I'm like,
yeah,
I haven't.
Because that is a very, obviously, and you
like
are, it's not a universal experience, but it is a very, very common experience.
Yes, exactly. I'm so much of an outlier, in the sense that I have not anymore felt fear of, like men or women accosting me any more than, what if there's a slasher killer, or, what if the bridge, there's a bridge over a creek on the way to the park, literally as I'm approaching the bridge, and like, but what if there really are parallel universes, and what if like some kind of tentacle monster could be hiding under the bridge? Like literally, like what sort of monsters are under the bridge is what I spook myself with. Like actual, not people, not bad people, no, like literal monsters under the bridge,
What a charmed life.
Teeth and like not just fangs, but like the whole jagged teeth, large jagged teeth and tentacles that can grab you so that you can't get away.
I have to say, you have that one over me. I at this point in my life, I don't ever really feel afraid if I'm out somewhere alone walking close to dark. Like I don't feel that kind of fear, but nor do I imagine tentacle monsters from other quantum realities.
And it's specifically under the bridge, and it's like a little bridge over a creek. It's drivable, it's not like a little footbridge or anything. Right. but it just goes what's essentially a drainage creek, or maybe it is a creek, I don't know, but I don't know if it was natural or man made. But I'm not, it's not, I know, like, it's not a rational fear. It's just like my brain going, yeah, but what if it's real? What if it was? You don't know. There's so much out there that we don't understand, like we were talking about with, the way that what self is. We don't know. There's so
Yeah,
much that's the
that's
part of that
true,
that
but
agnostic part of me is like, you don't know. You don't know what if monsters really are real. And they're just really good at hiding, but sometimes that's why people disappear and nobody ever knows why. And I'm just like, I'm not really scared of it, but like there's a part of my brain that says, but what if?
yeah,
So randomly and Sarah, yes, I am not just in the minority, but I'm an outlier.
yeah.
I'm Spider Dana.
You're Spiders, Dana.
I'm
You
Spider
skew the
Dana.
results for everything else.
Spider Dana, who is not afraid walking home alone at night or going for a jog in the dark of the morning when it's actually not freaking 90 plus degrees out at
Yeah.
110% humidity.
Yeah. Mm.
Is an outlier and should not be counted.
So
I know,
anyway,
and it's connected to water. I'm telling you, But what if there's like an underground tunnel and it comes up at that bridge in the dark? Anyway, that has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the book or the discussion.
What?
It's just my weird brain.
What a beautiful imagination you have. So yeah, let's talk about the book.
Don't know.
Let's talk about the book.
Yes.
Oh, my sweet summer child. This is actually, before we get to chapter 4, this is the start of the second part of the book. So we get a little scene between the two Wesses when the author Wes would visit the other Wes in prison. And it's a little scene titled...
Bridges are liminal spaces, Steve.
And yes, you're right. You're right.
Oh, random geek. Oh my goodness. There's a Black Dog book and it's great. Where there's an evil monster that comes up through the toilet and grabs like the protagonist and grabs them and it's an independent scene, so it's not actually part of a story. But the protagonist tries to start. They're a werewolf and they try to start shifting into their powerful form. And they feel it. I remember the description is they feel their bones shifting and their muscles, their body changing in the familiar way. And then they felt their body shifting and reshaping in an unfamiliar way as the claws tightened and they were pulled down. I'm like, oh, it's delightfully scary, but I still use the toilet.
Yeah, it's not that. Yeah, being pulled down into the toilet by a monster is not what I would call a rational fear.
It's not rational, but the text was really good. I was just like, oh, that's brutal. Oh, wonderfully terrifying.
Sarah is leaving us. Glad we could entertain you, Sarah.
We love you and come pay attention to how long we've been yakking. It's almost an hour before we get to the book.
Yeah. So let's talk about the
We've already read it, Sarah.
Let's talk about
let's talk about the liminal space.
The liminal space, yeah. So it's and this is called Choices and Second Chances, and it takes place recently following the other Wes's birthday, because it's explained that this is while the other Wes is in prison, and his birthday is actually on the 4th of July, but his visiting days are the odd days. So he could have visitors on the 3rd of July or the 5th of July, but not on the 4th of July, because that's not one of his visiting days. So the author Wes comes to visit the other Wes a couple days after his birthday, not actually on his birthday, but he says happy birthday, and they have a little talk, and while we're shown that while he's on his way in to the facility to see Wes, Wes, the author, reflects on his freedom and how nice it is to be able to breathe the air and look up at the sky. And, it sort of reminds him of how lucky he is to not be in a place like this. And he goes into the meeting room and he sees the other inmates meeting with their family members. He sees a young inmate who is meeting his girlfriend, who has brought in a baby that is presumably his child that he's meeting for the first time. And then he meets with the other Wes, and Wes asks him about when does he think was the moment that he became a man. And Wes, the author's answer is that he thinks he became a man when he realized that he was accountable to other people. But then he reflects on that and, to himself, and realizes that it might be more complicated than that, because he's never really thought about it. And he starts asking himself, like, when did I actually become a man? When did I actually become an adult? Like, was it when I realized I was accountable to other people, or was it something else? And then he realizes how different it is for other people, that not everybody has it the same way or at the same time. And, then that puts him back on the thoughts of the other people in prison, and how maybe it was different for them too, how some of them were sort of forced to, and including the other Wes in this, who were forced to be adults before they were ready, or before they should have had that responsibility put on them.
So I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
When did you become a man?
I'll let you know when it happens.
But I do think it's interesting, the other Wes, because he talks about, for some boys this happens later in their late teens or even 20s, allowing them to grow organically into adulthood. But for some of us, the promotion to adulthood, or at least its challenges, is so jarring, so sudden, that we enter into it unprepared, might be undone by it. So he's talking about adulthood.
Yeah.
And he seems to be equating that with becoming a man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I take, he's using them interchangeably.
But they're not, are they interchangeable?
Well, I mean, one of them is, I don't think it's good practice to phrase it in a gendered way, because women become adults and have and assume responsibilities just the same as men. So to say like this, now you have truly become a man, like it's,
well,
I think it's better. I think it's better to say now you have become an adult. But I mean, in practice, the two, they mean the same thing.
Do they?
I think so. In this context, I think they do. Yeah. Do you not think so?
Well, I mean, what does it mean to be a man?
Well, I mean, I kind of agree with what Wes the author says, that it means accepting responsibility. It means accepting responsibility for yourself, but also accepting that you are responsible to others, and that you're responsible to society as a whole. It's acknowledging that there is a world beyond you that you are to some measure responsible for, and to some measure accountable to. I think that's what it means. But I mean, women go through the same thing. So that's why, I would prefer to say that's when you become an adult, rather than that's when you become a man, because I think no matter what your gender identity is, I think you have to go through that at some point. The great disillusioning. Oh, the world doesn't actually revolve around me.
I think, but at the same time, I think, maybe that's because we're cis. I mean, because
True.
We don't really think about what it means to be a man or a woman.
Well, but see, I think you're talking about a different context now. I mean, what it means to be a man as opposed to another gender identity, I feel like that's a different question than the question that is being considered in this section.
Right. It's not, but I think a lot of that is the way that the author chose to take it, the direction the author chose to take that question. And it could have gone a different way. And so we don't really know what the other Wes was asking.
I suppose not. But yeah, but I think it's reasonable to interpret.
And the other thing is, because they are, there is the assumption that, if you've been assigned male, you will grow up to be a man when you are an adult. They are the same thing. And that if you have been assigned female, that you will grow up to be a woman. And that is, you're an adult and it will be that way for you.
Yeah.
And so, but that's what it means to be cis. It's like you've been assigned this way, and then when you become an adult, you are a man, and you've been assigned female, and you become a woman. And that's, I think that the equating of those two is part of the cis experience. I will say the first time I felt like an adult was when I paid a regularly occurring living expense, like it was my utility bill,
Okay.
from money that I had earned on my own, because my parents helped pay for college. So I'd lived, separate from them then, but they were still supporting me. And so when I lived on my own and paid a bill a regularly occurring bill associated, it wasn't when I bought groceries, on my own, but it was when I paid, I don't remember whether it was like electric, or I think at the first apartment I had, the one over D's garage, had water included. So it was probably my electric bill. And I was like, wow, like
I'm an adult.
I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was a definitive experience. It's something I remember, and that tells you a lot. It was important.
You remember the important things.
I forget a lot of the important things too, apparently, but that's okay.
Well, you have you take well to reminders, so that's okay.
I do.
But yeah, and then they talk about because Wes, the author, talks about, being responsible to other people and providing for other people. And the other Wes says, well, providing for other people isn't always easy. And sometimes you make mistakes, and some of those mistakes can be pretty unforgiving. And second chances, he says, are pretty fleeting. And he goes on to say, both of us did some pretty wrong stuff when we were younger, and both of us had second chances. But if the situation or the context where you make the decisions don't change, then second chances don't mean too much. In other words, if you get a second chance and then you don't do anything different with the second chance than you did the first time, second chance isn't really worth anything.
I didn't read that way.
Really?
That's interesting. Right, because he says if the situation or the context where you make the decisions don't change, then second chances don't mean too much. Like if you're in the same situation and like you still have the same problems, if you're choosing, your mistake, you didn't intend to make a mistake. Like people don't make mistakes on purpose. That's why we call them mistakes. So it's like if you're put back in that same situation, you're going to do the best that you can, and you're going to wind up with the same problems because you're still doing the best you can in the same context and the same situation. It leads, he's talking about the way that situations inform and shape choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
not
you're
just
right. Not just that you made you chose
make
to do
the same mistake thing. And you don't get another chance after that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. But then I don't know, this last couple of paragraphs from Wes, the author, sounded a little judgmental to me. When he says, because after the other Wes says that, the author Wes kind of, takes in the scene around them again with the other inmates in the visiting room. And he says, these incarcerated men, before they'd even reached a point of basic maturity, had flagrantly and tragically squandered the few opportunities they'd had to contribute productively to something greater than themselves. That feels a little harsh.
Yeah, that feels
on the incarcerated men. I mean, I'm sure some of them are assholes who deserve to be locked up, but a lot of them are probably people who were in shitty situations and were trying to do the best they could, and like what you were talking about a moment ago, like, it's not, they didn't make mistakes on purpose.
Yeah, that's what we mean by mistakes. But yeah, like when he says flagrantly, I'm just like,
yeah.
What that translates to me is they got caught.
Well, yeah. Like, because he says flagrantly and tragically, but it's when he says
squandered.
Yeah, when
Squandered is a very judgy word.
yes, when he says tragically, it sounds like like sort of like it sounds like when you say, "Oh, what a shame." You know what I mean? And it's like you're not really moved by it though. Like you don't really feel like a sense of tragedy. You're just being condescending. Um, yeah, that was a little off putting to me when I read it. Like, I was like, well, take it easy, Wes. Damn. I mean, I'm sure some of them are pieces of shit, but not all of them. Like, some people just
But
have a
I mean,
rough
and
life.
I don't necessarily think that, there are more rotten folks and selfish, jerks than there are in the general population. I
No,
mean, we
probably
got
not.
plenty of them out here, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. There's lots of assholes that just ain't got caught yet. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, you're
they're
absolutely
just
right. I
they're just smarter and or luckier.
lucky or have more resources or have more powerful friends. Um, but yeah, so that's the introduction to this part. And now we go to chapter 4, which is called Marking Territory, taking place in the year 1990. And we open with a scene in the life of the other Wes.
Which is
And
the year after Queen Latifah's debut album came out.
oh, nice, look at you. That is your frame of reference. My frame of reference is 1990 was also the year that both Sting and the Ultimate Warrior won their first world championships. And that's relevant because, of course, they started out as tag team partners.
Text to text connection.
Indeed, indeed. Um, anyway, so yeah, it's 1990, and we enter the chapter with the other Wes, and he is having a confrontation with his brother Tony. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you remember from the end of the previous chapter, the other Wes was about to enter into the drug trade,
Mm-hmm.
which Tony was very, very deeply involved in, and
But
is
also very, very deeply against for
yeah,
Wes.
exactly. He's told Wes for his entire life, don't do what I did, don't get involved in this, don't follow my example. You don't want to be a part of this. I don't want you to be a part of this. But now the other Wes is a part of it, and he has told his mom because and the reason that what precipitated this confrontation is Wes is doing well enough in the drug trade that he's got a lot of walking around money now, and he's been buying shoes and fancy clothes and sprucing up his room. And he has told his mom that this money is coming from his side gig as a DJ. And Tony calls bullshit on this right away. Tony's like, no, you're not a DJ. DJs don't make this much money. Um, I know where the money's coming from. Just tell me where the money's coming from. And Wes keeps insisting against all good
Stick
sense.
to the story, man. Stick to the
Yeah,
story. No,
exactly.
what are you gonna do? You gonna get beat up less if he tells the truth? I'm
Maybe,
with
I
Wes
don't
on.
know. I mean, it seems like what sets Tony off. I mean, you're right. He was probably going to take a beating no matter what. You're right. But it seems like what really sets Tony off is the fact that Wes will not admit to it when they both know damn well where the money came from.
No. Because if Wes had been so defiant as to say, "Yeah, I got it in drugs, just like you," what are you gonna? I mean, like that sort of, you know, that goes against Tony's creed. Don't if they disrespect you, you put them in their place.
Well, but then then Wes is the only. I feel like the only move that Wes had then was to do like the old commercial and just go, "You all right? I learned it from watching you." You know, don't get in Tony's face about it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
but at the same time, you can't, again, Wes is not going to show vulnerability. So he goes into
yeah,
defensive mode. He can't take Tony, and he's not gonna break down and cry in front of them, because then, that's not manly,
yeah,
so
true.
anyway.
But what happens is Wes denies it one too many times, and Tony just starts kicking the shit out of him. He punches him, he knocks him down, he gets on top of him, he pins his arms down with his legs, and he just starts fucking going to town.
Bam.
Just, I mean, beating the tar out of him. Just but their mom comes in And she's like, oh shit, Tony, get off of him. And she's like, what are you doing? Why are you beating up your brother? And Tony tells her, he says he's out on the street. He's selling drugs. I told him not to, but he didn't listen to me. And Mary, the mom, says, oh no, he got that money from his DJing job. And Tony's like, are you kidding me? Like you can't you can't possibly believe that. But mom sticks by Wes and she says, hey, that's what he told me and I believe him. And Tony's like, whatever, and basically walks away at that point. He's just like, I can't deal with this. If you want to, if you really believe that he got the money from being a DJ, then you believe that.
I think what really stuck out for me was Wes didn't think Tony was a hypocrite exactly. He knew why his brother felt obliged to warn him off, but it was clear that Tony himself didn't have any better ideas, or he would have made those moves himself. It's like what we were talking about in the prison dialogue.
Yeah.
That if you get back if you're in a situation with no good options, what are you going to do when you ain't got good options? And so they're all just doing the best that they can, and the options that they have all suck.
Well, and
as far as they can tell.
And I mean that it's sort of the crux of the disagreement between the other Wes and Tony, because Tony keeps saying, and Tony, he says at the end of this scene when he walks away, before he leaves, he says to Wes, you don't have to do this. You have the potential to be more than this and to do better for yourself. And Tony seems to truly believe that. But the problem is Wes doesn't believe that.
Well, Tony believes that. I'm sure he does. But I mean, at the same time, he doesn't say you can do this or do that.
Well, no,
he believes you can do something. He believes there got to be something else, because he needs to believe that there can be something else, that there are other options.
And I think the problem is the way it looks from Wes's point of view is that he and Tony are in the same spot. Mm-hmm. Tony's saying, but no, you can be better. Wes is saying, but we're in the same place. There aren't any other options.
Yeah.
Tony just either doesn't see that or doesn't want to admit that.
Well, Wes doesn't really say anything at this point. So.
Well, no, but that is, I mean, that's the decision that he's made.
But yeah, and I mean, I think what we're seeing here is that both Mary and Tony it's wishful thinking on both their parts.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Tony wants there to be options for Wes that Wes just doesn't see, and Tony doesn't explain because he just kind of hopes that they're there. And so in his own way, he's just as blind as Mary is with her wishful thinking that it's money he got from DJ.
Right.
And
then in the very next scene, we find that Mary clearly wants to believe Wes, but she's in kind of a trust but verify situation where she's like, because the next scene is Mary going into Wes's room while Wes is out, and,
oh my gosh,
and looking under his bed and finding some shoe boxes, and she opens the shoe boxes, and there's drugs in the shoe boxes. And so what Mary does is she takes all these drugs that she found in the shoe boxes and she flushes them down the toilet. And this is like, and I think the contents are described. It's weed, it's crack, it's powder cocaine, it's pills. Like, it's a lot of different stuff. And large amounts. Like, because he's selling it. It's not just his own stuff. Like,
it's dealing amounts, not a stash.
Yeah, he refers to it later as his working boxes. Like, it's stuff that he was supposed to sell, and she flushes it all down the toilet. So he comes home, and he sees the boxes out on his bed, so he knows he's been caught. And at first he's like, "Oh shit, Mom found my boxes." Then he opens the boxes and sees that they're empty, and he goes from being worried to being pissed off at his mom because he goes in and finds her and he says, you just flushed $4,000 worth of drugs down the toilet, right? And I owe for that. Like, the people that have me selling the drugs want their money. How am I going to pay them? You just got rid of all the drugs I was going to sell to get the money to pay the drug dealers who gave me the drugs to sell. And I kind of see Wes's side of this. Like, if I were in Wes's situation and I came home and all the drugs I was going to sell were gone because my mom flushed them down the toilet, and I said to my mom, where am I going to get the $4,000 I owe these guys now? And her response was basically what his mom says in the scene, which is, hey, that's your problem. The number one thing on my mind would be, where am I going to get the money to pay the drug dealers so that they don't kill me? I kind of see Wes's side of it. And of course, it turns out to be not that big of a deal because he just says, well, I'll just sell more drugs and that's where I'll get the money. Mm-hmm. But
it's putting him deeper in hock, and it's creating a rift between him and his mom. It's actually making that well, but
it's making the problem. It's making the problem worse than it was to begin with.
Yeah.
And if I were Wes, and granted, he's not in the best situation to begin with, and probably isn't thinking clearly, but I would be pretty pissed at mom.
Yeah,
because it's a very after school special kind of thing to do, where it's like, I'll just get rid of these drugs. Okay, well, do you have $4,000? Because that's what I owe those guys now. Because you got rid of all the drugs I was going to sell for them. So, you know what I mean? Like, like, could we have talked about it? Could you have said, okay, you get rid of those drugs and pay those guys off, and then say you're out?
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't be that simple either, but it would be a lot easier than having to call them up and say, oh, hey, I don't have any of the drugs you gave me to sell.
Or any money.
Or any of the money that I was supposed to get for them.
Yeah,
Can you please not murder me?
It's like the opposite of Tupperware parties and stuff, where like you buy in and then you like advertise the product, and then like, you buy it and then you essentially sell it at a markup to your friends. Like, you get the product and then you have to sell it.
Right.
And then you pay them. And like, I'm just like, no, that's a bad idea, because, you're in hock. That's just not good. It's, and with every business venture, there's theoretically risk. Right. And, but in legal business ventures, the risk is, your business might fail and your investors lose their investment. But they know that going in, and so they weigh, that as a how much risk, how likely is your business model to succeed? What sort of need are you fulfilling within the community? What is your market? And, what product are you offering it, or what service are you offering at what price? And, they think about those things before, offering you a business loan or before investing in your company. And if it fails, your next project may be less likely to get funded, but people probably aren't going to kill you for it, or, bust a kneecap or anything like that. No. So there is that. That is definitely an advantage to legal businesses.
Yeah. The far less likely scenario that you will be murdered if your business falls on hard times is definitely an advantage. So if you're like a not a manager, but what do they call it, a franchise owner for like McDonald's, and like everybody starts going to Burger King, your business fails, but you're not killed for it. Right, exactly. The CEO of McDonald's isn't going to come to your house and fucking kill you. Yeah. Ronald McDonald's not going to show up with a gun.
As far as I know.
I've never heard of that happening.
For a jog in the dark, I might be thinking about, Ronald McDonald on the bridge.
I mean, I did used to hear stories of Wendy garroting people, but I mean,
I don't know, never been much of a fan of Wendy's.
oh, big bacon classic, baby. It's
It's
not
all
as good
right,
as it
but
used to be.
let me tell. I'm I love it, but man, that sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddle, oh, that's like the best. Okay,
It's
back to
good.
the book.
It's good.
Back to the book.
I
Back
got
to the
no
book.
complaints. Anyway, yeah, so that's basically the end of the other West section. He resolves that he'll just have to sell more drugs to pay off the money that his mom just flushed down the toilet, and that's basically it. Um, so then we move to West, the author, who is having his own troubles, not quite as
Not
dire
quite.
as the other West, but so he's 11 at this point. He's still living in New York with his mom and his grandparents. And we find out that he's having a lot of trouble in school, and it's frustrating to his mom because he's getting really lousy grades, but she sees that he has this natural aptitude for picking up lyrics to songs. Like he can hear a song once or twice and he's got all the lyrics in his head and he can sing along and not miss a syllable. And she's like, how can you do that? Like, how is it that you have such a great memory and such a great aptitude for picking stuff up so quickly? You can sing along to a song on the radio that you've only heard once before, but your grades are in the toilet. You know, it must be
Oh
that you're
yeah,
not.
this was right about the time that Fight the Power came out,
Yeah,
and he mentions that because I'm looking at that, and Public Enemy's Black Nationalist Anthem. So I'm like, yeah,
yeah, fight the power.
there you go.
And he, so his mom's conclusion that she comes to is, well, you're just not working hard enough, which is kind of true because it turns out the reason his grades are failing is because he's most of the time he's not even going to class. He's skipping school, and and even when he goes, he's kind of a problem student. He tells us he gives us a little detail about how his English teacher is actually happy for him to cut class because he's such a disruption in class when he's there that it makes it impossible for her to teach the class. So she's like, if you want to cut class, go ahead because it's better for everybody else if you're not here. Um, so he's like, great. I guess I'll cut class. Um, and there's a scene here in this part before we get to the latter portion of the show, and we see what ultimately happens to Wes in this chapter. But there's a scene here that's one of my favorite scenes in the book so far, where he's talking about his younger sister, Shawnee, and a time when she got into a fight with one of the other neighborhood girls and came home with a bloody nose, or Wes came home and found her with like holding like a napkin to her face because she had a bloody nose. And so Wes, who again is 11 at this point, decides, okay, nobody messes with my little sister. And they know who did it. They know who the other girl was that they got into the fight with. So Wes is going to this other little girl's house to confront her and tell her, don't you be doing that to my sister. But Wes doesn't go alone because Aunt Bibi goes with him. And Aunt Bibi is his godmother who has been living in the house with him now for a while. And she's like an old friend of his grandparents. And she's a 40-something-year-old woman. So we have this hilarious scene, to me anyway, of this 11-year-old kid and this 40-something-year-old woman marching down the street in deadly earnest to go confront this child who had fought this other child. And there's something about this scene that I just find absolutely hilarious of like this because like I love Aunt Bibi and her reaction because like she sees 11-year-old Wes like walking out the door going, I'm gonna go find Letitia and I'm gonna tell her not to mess with my sister. And Aunt Bibi's like, I'm coming with you. And she's not saying I'm coming with you, so that there's an
To make
adult
sure that you
present.
don't start anything.
Right. She said, no, I'm coming with it because I got something to say to that little shit too. And it's like, oh, so Aunt Bibi doesn't necessarily seem like the most responsible adult presence, but I absolutely love her. I'm just like, yeah, go fuck up that kid, Aunt BB. Um,
Well, but also, I mean, I think there is, again, this is written from Wes's perspective.
right.
I think there is essentially Aunt Vivi is like proto-Karening.
Sort of, yeah, yeah.
And she gets in the word first, which is, I am a grown-up. This is going to go down peaceably, and I'm going to tell you how it is. And, Letitia is too cool to show submission and too scared to show defiance, which would not necessarily be the case with Wes.
Oh, yeah,
So
sure.
the fact that Aunt Vivi is the one who initiates things in this situation definitely takes, removes some the possibility of escalation. Additionally, because she gonna keep Wes in line too.
Right.
He gets his little bit in, but
Yeah.
that's it. That's all.
I love Aunt BB. Um, but yeah, so after that, we see Wes meeting his friend Shay, and Shay is a drug dealer, and also is a tagger. And we learned that Wes is a tagger too, and they're hanging out in front of this bar where the wall of the bar is covered in graffiti, and we're told, and Wes tells us that one of the tags on the wall is his. That him and Shay like to go uh, tag, and Wes's trademark is KK with a circle around it, and that's like his um, alter ego. He calls it, and the KK stands for Kid Cupid, which again, I mean, it sounds like the name of like an indie wrestler back in the day.
An
Who'd be
alter
wrestling.
ego, I assumed, to advertise my largely imaginary prowess with the young ladies.
Can't you picture like like maybe a young Will Smith, you know, in like a comedy playing a
Bless his
character
little heart.
who refers to himself as Kid Cupid, like
Yeah, there's definitely some self-effacing humor here.
yeah.
He's very much,
Oh yeah. He's definitely
he's
sort
like,
of yeah
God, I was such a little dork.
inviting us to
Yes,
chuckle at him. Yeah, for
yes,
sure.
Wes, you were.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, Kid Cupid. But yeah, so
a less than smooth criminal, as we will find out.
as we find out pretty soon here, because he and Shay start to do a little spray painting um, on the wall where they're at, and the cops show up, and they get caught
Busted.
for vandalism, right? Yeah, and they get cuffed and put into the car. And then Shay has the brilliant idea. He says, I know what'll get us out of this. We'll just say that we didn't do it. And Wes is like, they saw us doing it. Like they found spray cans in your backpack. Like they know it was us. And Shay's like, no, we're gonna just I'm gonna say that we didn't do anything. And whenever they ask me questions about it, I'm just gonna say I don't know what they're talking about. And Wes is like, all right, well, good luck with that. And one of the cops starts to ask him what's going on, and they both are yelling at the cop, telling their completely contradictory stories. Where Shay is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. And Wes is apologizing for Shay and trying to sort of like throw himself on the mercy of the cops. Saying like, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. I apologize. It wasn't, and they're lucky. They're very lucky because the cop lets them go. He gives them kind of a talking to and says, you better smarten up because if you keep doing this, then you're going to get in real trouble, et cetera, et cetera. And they keep they keep Shay's backpack. And luckily Shay is a drug dealer, but he apparently didn't have drugs in the backpack. He just had spray cans and stuff. So the cops keep the backpack and keep the spray cans, but they let them go. They basically say, keep your nose clean and get out of here. So they go. And Wes says, the cops gave us, and this is how the chapter ends. He says, the cops gave us a gift that day, and I swore I would never get caught in a situation like that again. A week later, Kid Cupid was on the loose again, adding my tag to another graffiti-filled Bronx wall. So he didn't really learn his lesson.
Oh, yes, he did.
Yeah.
Because he swore he would never get caught in a situation like that again. Like I was saying, you know, there's assholes out here, and they just ain't been caught.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna straighten up and get better at this so I don't get caught anymore. I'm not gonna stop doing it. I'm just gonna be a lot smarter about it. So yeah, I mean, sort of to take it back to where it started with the scene between the two Wesses in the visitation room. Um, in this chapter, we definitely see both Wesses making bad choices, or at least having made bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
But the choices aren't equally bad. Obviously the author Wes is not in nearly as desperate a situation as the other Wes.
Yeah.
He's making mistakes. He's screwing up. Um, but as we keep saying, and as has been sort of your point for the entire book so far, like Wes, the author, has family, has a support system, has a house to go to, is not in any kind of a situation where he would ever feel like he had to sell drugs or turn to any other kind of crime, you know, to have a better life. Whereas the other Wes is in that exact situation. You know, for him, hustling on the streets is the best option. That's the only way he can see where if I want to have nice clothes, if I want to have money in my pocket, this is the way I can get it. I don't see
Mm-hmm.
another way to do this.
Well, and also, you know, that you know, as I'm looking at this, I would see it's interesting that the parallel here is between um the author hanging out with Shay and which seems more closely to parallel the scene from the previous chapter where the other Wes was walking around his neighborhood and he saw somebody that he didn't know, a
Right.
stranger who
Oh
had a
yeah.
nice set of headphones, and he's like, I want headphones like that. And the stranger tells him that you can do that and you can make some money too if you work as a lookout essentially.
Yeah.
And that's how he got in. But Wes is hanging out with Shay, who he knows is involved in drugs and hustling, but he just stays away from that. He chooses it. And so he doesn't seem to have the desire to prove himself with by a show of wealth,
Right.
that the other West does. And I think some of that is also the influence of Tony, like him seeing Tony, but also, I mean, I would think it would be more than that as well. I'm guessing it's also among his peers, that there is a measure of respect that comes from that. But again, like I said, I'm guessing there. It's difficult to tell because the text doesn't really get into it. But there's definitely a difference in how they approach and what their desires are, and what they want for themselves. Because tagging is more about it's not about what you carry with you. It's about I was here. It's
Right.
about evidence of your presence, but it's not about pulling the attention to yourself individually. Whereas, especially in the way that the other West chooses what he chooses to do with the money that he earns, he shows it on his person. He doesn't even save up. Of course, he may not be old enough, but he ain't saving up for a nice ride.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's
He
spending it on
is
shoes and clothes and stuff. Yeah.
things that very immediate stuff. Especially as if he's too young to drive, he sure as heck still ain't finished growing.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to outgrow those shoes. And plus, I mean, you have to be really careful and to keep them looking the way that they are supposed to, that they're actually not comfortable to wear, because you have to keep tissue paper in the toes when you wear them so that they don't crease.
Right.
I mean, it's like, it's like, it's a process. It really is. Um, and it's that very immediate and very centered on, not just centered on self, but centered on the presentation of self visually.
Yeah.
That I think is an important difference. Whereas with tagging, it's like, I was here and this is my space. I have my signature here. But you're not there anymore. But it's evidence that you were, evidence that lasts beyond the immediate. And so we already in their illegal activities, we see a difference, because like literally the author Wes's criminal activities show a focus on the future.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And it's probably because even though they have both come from difficult circumstances, Wes, the author's circumstances have at least allowed him to imagine a future.
Yeah.
Or assume that there will be some kind of a future for him. Whereas the other Wes's life has been so rotten and so
Yeah.
hopeless that, and because he is stuck in, a very lower class existence, his preoccupation and what he uses the money for is to project a higher status,
Yeah.
for himself, because he's been forced to live in this lower status and to be forced
And
to live.
it's all about respect.
Yeah.
It is all about respect.
And his role model is Tony. And one of the first things that we're told about Tony, once Tony gets to that point where he is a drug dealer, is everybody respects Tony.
Yeah.
He might be a drug dealer, he might be a thug. Everybody respects Tony. They know who Tony is. They know that, he's not the kind of guy to mess with. And if he says he's going to do something, he'll do it. And they are, yeah. And that is what, and I think that's part of the reason why Tony's continued attempts to sort of warn Wes off of his life fail, because all Wes sees when he sees Tony is a big shot. In his world of poverty and crime, someone like Tony, who is respected, even, yeah, he's a drug dealer, he's respected, and he has money in his pocket, and he can afford to make his own way in the world. And yeah, it's a shitty world, and it's a way that is
he
made.
Has agency.
He has agency, exactly.
He has, Wes sees that he has agency,
and that's all that Wes cares about.
Put together that Tony is continually that $4,000 that he was worried about. That is something that Tony has to worry about all the time.
Oh yeah.
But he doesn't piece that. As far as we know, he doesn't seem to piece that together.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very much about, and that's and I'll send you a link so that you can put it in the video description. There is there's a documentary that we watch called The Line before we begin this. Mm-hmm. And it follows 4 people who are dealing with poverty and looks at the ways in which their situations are similar in the sense that they're dealing with poverty, but the reasons for why they're in these situations, their situations are also very different as far as the context and how it came about for each of them. And one of them, a woman named Sheila, says that's part of the reason why people in poor neighborhoods don't pursue education, because education means that you are planning for the future, and they don't see a future. They are expecting that they'll be in jail or dead, easily by the time that they're 25, probably before then.
Yeah.
It's that they don't see a future. And that's what we're seeing with the other West already. And even before this, that there's no thinking about the future. It's living in the present, because that's all that you can count on. You can't count on a future.
Yeah. I got to get what I can get now.
Because if I'm planning for later, I might not get nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's chapter 4. I mean, I really,
Very cheerful.
well, yeah. I mean,
But kind of like, and I was thinking about Mrs. Downs, or Miss
yes,
Downs.
I
I
was,
don't,
yeah, Mrs. Downs. Yeah, I was wondering if you had any particular
thinking
thoughts about
about
her.
that, that, um, Lord, I can literally pinpoint the most recent child that I have thought that about. I know exactly who it
Oh,
is.
like when you thought it'd be better off if they just weren't in class.
That when the class when that student was not in class, class went smoother.
Yeah.
But would I ever say that to that kid? No, because I want that kid to be in class, even if it's harder for me. Because guess what? The class is not about me. It's not. It's not about me. But the thing is, I am a veteran teacher, and also I'm really big. And I'm not gonna take it. I'm not gonna. And there are some kids, they will keep going. But the thing is, I am more stubborn than them. They don't realize how stubborn I am. I am more stubborn than you are, student. Just keep trying it. I will keep pushing back. I will absolutely keep pushing back. I will absolutely keep pushing back. I will contact your parents. I will fill out forms when necessary. But only when I'm required to. I don't write students up for back talking me. Students usually don't backtalk me that much. There's some of it that I just don't care about. It's just not a big deal. But it's not continued. I will not put up with continually pulling focus away from the lesson or the work or distracting others. You don't get to get in the way of someone else's education. That's not okay. If you choose to doodle little, things on your work instead of actually doing the work, I will talk to you about what you're doing and what you're supposed to be doing, but I can't do the work. I can't learn it for you. And I can't actually make you do the work. I can't do that.
Right.
But I can I can observe, and I can let your parents know, this is what happened in class. Here's what I did. Here's what the students did. Now, I absolutely want to do that so that we are all on the same page. I will let the counselors know. I will let administrators know. We will do whatever we can to make sure that you have what you need to be successful. It is a process. I'm wondering why. This would have been pre-email. So it would have been even more difficult for Mrs. Downs to be in contact with a single parent who is probably at work when Mrs. Downs is teaching, in school and has access to like the rosters and everything. Mrs. Downs probably exhausted at the end of the day does not want to spend her evenings attempting to call parents that she couldn't get in touch with during her planning period. She may not have support from administration. So it's just, she's in a difficult situation as a new teacher. That's rough. But I can't imagine. And again, we're hearing this from Wes's point of view. But I can't imagine saying to a student, just don't come, rather than saying, why? I mean, and it's tough to say, it's tough to have those individual conversations when you've got a classroom full of 30 to 35 other students, and you got to take care of them too. When are you going to have this conversation that you need to have with this kid? Essentially what I do is I go during my planning period, I find out where they're at during my planning period, and I pull them out of that class and call and say, we need to, what's going on here? Tell me about this. Why aren't you here? And why are you being noisy? What's going on? Why, it's hard for me to, it's hard for me to fathom that they're saying, well, Wes just can't retain information. And there are multiple reasons for that. I mean, the whole, you're just not trying. Well, why isn't he trying? The fact that his teachers literally think he's got a learning disability. I don't know.
That seems weird because the teachers know that he's not coming to class.
Yeah. I mean,
Like, I mean,
it's
I
a
mean, it's
skill
possible that,
deficit,
it's
not
possible that
any.
both, it's possible that both could be true. He could, you know, have a learning disability and therefore school is really frustrating for him. And that's the reason he's not coming
Mhm.
to class. But it seems like, you know, usually usually the simplest explanation is the best one. And if his grades are slipping and he's not coming to class, it seems like the first thing they would think is, well, he needs to come to class,
One of
not,
the
well, he
things that
must
his
have a
mom does
learning
not
disability.
pick up on is, yeah, he's memorized these song lyrics by listening to them
Right.
repeatedly, listening to them repeatedly, not by reading them, not by looking at them and studying them. And so, you know, having lessons on tape that are presented in an engaging manner would, you know, might be to his benefit, something he could listen to while he's doing something else, you know, while he's practicing shooting hoops or, you know, playing, you know, or looking
Mhm.
after Shawnee or something like that, something that he could, you know, have on a Walkman or something like that. So it's just, yeah,
Yeah.
it was interesting to think about that.
It is. I mean, I know, and I mean, I've never been a teacher and I've never been a parent, so I don't know for a fact. But it does seem like a lot of the challenge is finding the way to engage a student. Because like I'm the same way. I'm not to the extent that Wes is. Like I never
Mhm.
skipped school. I never was in danger of flunking out or anything. But if it's, and even now as a grown up, I mean, if it's something that I'm really interested in and I'm engaged with and I care about, I will work day and night. You know what I mean? Like you don't if it's something that that I'm not engaged with, that doesn't capture my interest, and like for me in school that was math. And it still is as a grown up. Like I don't get it. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. It is work. And those were the only classes I ever really struggled with in school were math classes. Uh, you know, English class, social studies class, history class, that kind of stuff. Like that was never a problem because it was easy for me to get engaged with that.
I would love to do math with you. I mean, if we didn't have a bazillion other things that we're attempting to work on, and you know, you've got your channel, and I'm working on the green room, and
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the world literature course that I'm, you know, trying to put together in a while, and I need to do that because you know, some of my access to some of the documents that I'm looking at will end at the end of the month. So I need to make sure that that's all settled, and then look into the assignments that I have and how I can adapt them instead, and or if I want to do something completely new. And of course, I haven't actually gotten my course assignments for next year officially. So
Yeah.
I'll be bummed if I don't get to do this. But at the same time, once I have everything settled, just wait for a new administrator.
Wait for it. Yeah, you'll get to do
I'll
it at
have
some
what I
point.
need. So,
Yeah.
and if I don't get it next year, I'll be like, okay, so I'll do what I did before. So, ta-da! Oh God, just don't give me American Lit, which I haven't done before. But yeah, I mean, it really is about, you know, engaging the student, because the thing is, there are things that, and I talk about that with students in English class, because quite often by 10th grade, they're like, why are we still taking English? Like, Loretta, probably not, because there's just so much other stuff that we want to do first. And I'm
Well,
already on live streams like twice a week sometimes.
and also you did, I mean, you did pitch doing a math book for this
Yeah, but
series,
you said no
and
calculus, and
I
now I've
I
got a basic algebra book.
well, we're not doing that either.
Just a little.
No.
We can just have a conversation about it.
We could make you could we can have a conversation about it in private sometime.
Well, maybe we could do like a Zoom call and we could have a conversation about it, like we do for some of our, and you could record it, and it could be the conversation where an English teacher tries to convince a professional YouTuber that math is interesting.
You know, this is one of those deals where I am touched and also highly amused that you are very invested in this and I am not invested in it at all.
See, it's about engaging the students, Steve. It's
well,
about engaging the students. But
but like,
this is exactly what I have to do, because my course is required, and it's very much like in algebra or higher maths beyond arithmetic, where students are like, Why do I got to do this? I already speak English. I've been speaking English my whole freaking life.
Right.
I can read, I can write, I can talk. I don't need this. And so what I say to students is, I understand that that's what you think, but apparently there are a whole freaking lot of grown-ups who don't agree with you. They think that you need to be required to take this class and to learn the skills that we go over in this class, which seem very familiar to you. Because we do reading, which you can already read. We study writing, which you can already write. So what is there to learn, and why is it so important that like literally our lawmakers would enforce your attendance in this class, and you have to pass this class in order to get your diploma?
Right.
Why is it so important to the people who make the laws in our society, and to the people who have voted for them, like our community? What is going on that is so important? And I think that conversation draws them in because it acknowledges their concerns as valid. It says, yes, I understand. It totally makes sense that you're like, why am I doing this again? That's fair. Oh, some random geek has a very interesting question.
Yes, I was.
If you had you had one more course that you had to fill, and those were the two elective options, anarchism and math. What would
I would choose anarchism in a heartbeat.
Okay.
I would choose anything over math.
Anything over math.
I hated math in school. I hated it. I didn't take any more of it in college than I absolutely had to.
I didn't take math in college.
And I just
actually, technically.
Well, because you got credit in high school, like you.
No, actually, but I did.
Or you tested out or something.
I tested out at the first level, and for whatever reason, Introduction to Computer Science counted as math class. I have no idea why.
Oh man,
I have no idea why.
I wish my school had felt the same, but now some random geek. Now you're being really mean about it. D and D over math.
Some random geek. No. Steve, don't answer. Some random geek. Hold out onto that. Just take one ask away. No. Oh gosh. I don't know. Take one ask away off and use that as an ask away question. But don't or don't, and I'll try to save that. But the thing is, I'm not going to be around for the next two askaways because
you're going to play.
Woohoo! I hope. Oh, wait, here. Barring further catastrophe, COVID still being a thing.
Indeed. Yeah. So you want to go ahead and wrap this up because
let's do.
So
charity links.
Charity links are in the description. Charitylinks.page. And you can go and check out some GoFundMes and PayPal links and such for some friends of ours who need a helping hand, and we really wish that you would do that. Also, don't forget that Dana has her very own YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Dana Cole Dares, where you can watch all. Now you've accumulated quite a catalog over the last several months. You've really been working hard at it, and you have a lot of really cool videos. I take
things seriously, Steve. I take everything seriously.
You do. You do.
I do. Probably more seriously than many things deserve. That's why that is a source of stress for me. But I care, and that matters.
And it shows. And your videos are great. And anybody who is watching this should subscribe to Dana's channel and watch her videos.
And leave comments.
Subscribe
or don't subscribe, guys. But leave comments.
I think your most recent video was your completion of Pride and Prejudice.
Thank goodness. I do have. I'm debating whether I want to do a follow-up. I still have not decided.
Yeah.
But I have some stuff on. I have some thoughts on the thing as a whole. So I'm like, yeah, is it enough?
It might be good to
go back to that.
It might be good to take a few weeks off and then come back to it. But and then you shot a video today about libraries that I'm editing for you over the weekend that will be up next week, Tuesday. Right? For Tuesday. Yeah. And that's going to be good. That's a good one. And so, yeah, Dana Kildare, youtube.com/Dana Kildares. Also, as we mentioned a moment ago, and as we mentioned on Wednesday as well, because you are in a play, and
Woo!
next week is Tech Week. We will not be doing a Trek Reluctantly next week because you'll be at the play. So we will be back the week after next for the next Trek Reluctantly. I will have a video up on Monday. It's sort of an impromptu rant video that I recorded earlier. Uh, and then on Wednesday, I'll also have another Star Trek video about. I think I mentioned it on Wednesday. It'll be about shipping, and which has suddenly become a somewhat hot topic on Twitter because Anthony Mackie sort of gave kind of a weird, shitty answer to what does he think about people shipping Sam and Bucky on Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which
Oh,
I
so not like FedEx.
no, not like shipping things in the mail, like relationships, like
Relationships are complicated.
pairings.
Pairings are also complicated.
Pairing, yes, indeed. Um, Loretta wants to
Loretta,
really
I don't know if they're going to be doing that, but I will. I mean,
if
seriously,
if there is
like
information for
you can maybe I'll have that for my next Ask Away question, because I won't be there. What can you let us know about Dana's play? Because the manager of the theater of the group, not the director of the play, but the producer, I guess, said that if they didn't live stream it, they would be recording it and putting it up somewhere. But I don't know anything more than that at this point. But yeah. Oh, apparently I'm utterly terrifying, and it's so much fun. I have like a cane with a metal tip, and it just goes tap. It's not like super loud where I don't go thump thump, but like as I walk along, tap 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 tap, and so it's become this very don't forget that I am here and I am watching you, and you'd better behave appropriately. So it's so much
yeah.
fun.
So if there is, I mean, if there is a way for others to see the play, we will definitely let you know. And of course, I mean, I hope there is because I would love to see it because otherwise I won't get to see it. And
Well, yeah, same here. I mean,
you want to see it too, right? Because you'll be in
I
it. You
do.
won't be watching it. You want to see it. But yeah, because you were in 1984 last year, and that was live streamed, and I got to watch that, and that was awesome. That was the first time I actually got to see you in a play, which was cool. Even despite having talked about you with talk with you about different productions you've been in. So I would love to see you in a Little Princess too. We'll just see if it works out. But if
Yeah, and if it is live streamed, they do have a channel. So I mean, you could be like, hey, folks, here it is.
oh,
Da-da-da-da.
absolutely,
Y'all can have like a Saturday, not you live streaming, but the theater company live
yeah,
streaming.
absolutely.
So yeah, that would
Yeah,
be
I
so much
mean,
fun
whatever. Yeah,
for you anyway. I would be having fun being on stage. Woo!
yeah. But yeah, so that's what's coming up, and yeah, and then a week from today will be the next Ask Away. So yeah, that's what's coming up in the near future.
Did I tell you? Sarah said that. I think I told you that our Sarah, it's a little princess. So
Yeah,
Sarah Crew is the
yeah,
main character, and the actress. When we got off stage after I told her that she was penniless and a pauper, and
yeah.
there was no one to take care of her. She had nobody in the world unless I chose to keep her there at the school out of charity. And so after that scene, lights out, and we went backstage. She's like, I was tearing up. I almost cried on stage for real. I was like, "Oh, thank you." I'm terrible and I'm awful, and it's so much fun.
You should go full Miss Mention on her and say, "Aren't you going to thank me for improving your performance?"
Well, after I'd butchered that scene and had so many lines out of order, I thanked her for just waiting for her cue and then going
Yeah,
for her next bit, because she did. I mean, she's a kid and she did a great job. I think, despite the fact that she has more lines than anybody in the play, she was the first one to be off book. I mean,
that's fantastic.
she's done such a good
That's
job. And I
terrific.
can't wait for her to be in high school so that I can see her in plays. Hopefully she'll be at our school. I actually don't know what school she goes to.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, yeah. So, I mean,
that's what's coming up.
yeah. So, and you and I are going to talk a whole bunch between now and then, but I think this will be your last live stream before your show. So,
Yeah.
best of luck.
Thank
Break
you.
a leg.
Or two.
Or how, yeah, whatever you theater people say.
As we do.
And yeah, so thanks for watching, everybody. We'll be back in a couple weeks for the next read away, whenever your play is over.
No, because
no, that's right.
The place skips the July 4th weekend.
That's right. So
we'll be back a week after next. For
Read Away will be on the regular schedule. Yeah. So anyway, so we'll be back for chapter 5 next time for Read Away. So read chapter 5 sometime in the next 2 weeks if you're reading along with us. And yeah, that's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Happy Juneteenth. And yeah, it's a national holiday now.
Finally.
It only took 150 some odd years.
And I mean, not only that, but just the lack of understanding of what it is.
Yeah.
That could be a whole thing on its own.
Yeah.
It's not actually about the actual end of slavery, white folks.
No, I mean, that's what it's come to symbolize, but that's not literally what it commemorates, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Anyway,
bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take care. See you next time.